What's up, guys? Tristan Clunas here, and I have a great friend of mine. Actually, we've been doing these webinars for a few months now. We talked about new construction. We spoke about, first-time buyers, how to finance your home, how to refinance your home in order to pull the money and build equity. All those videos are there. Literally, just look up my name. You'll be able to pull it out, like, subscribe. But today, I have a great friend of mine who's going to come in and really educate us. It's a very special edition because we have a lawyer. So watch what you say, watch what you think. No, I'm joking. We have a lawyer here. We have Irene Brooks from Brooks Law to give us some insight. We're going to be talking about tenants and landlords. If you're somebody that's looking to be an investor and you want to rent your place out, you're going to have to talk, and deal with tenants. So we're going to have conversations about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Mostly good because it's not all bad. And we're going to dive right into it. But first I want to say, hey.
Hi.
How are you, Irena?
I'm good. I'm happy that this COVID thing is slowly disappearing.
Yeah. And it's nice, and we have some sunshine here today, guys.
Today.
Yeah, which is dope. Really, really nice. But I want you to just kind of give yourself.
Sure.
Or let us know about yourself. Yeah,
sure.
Give yourself. Let us know about you. Give us a little intro about you.
Sure. So my name is Irene Brooks. I'm the principal lawyer and owner of Brooks Law Professional Corporation, which is a real estate law firm primarily. We also practice in wills and estates. And I recently actually partnered with a business partner to branch off into another firm, which is Henry Brooks LLP, which will also be encompassing corporate law services as well.
Nice.
We still will be providing the same service, but we're just growing a larger team as we're expanding. And now we just opened a West End office in Mississauga. So I'm excited about that.
That's amazing.
And I work with many realtors in the community. Tristan is one of them. So whenever I have an opportunity to give back or speak or do a webinar, podcast, etc., I'm happy to do so because I think in this day and age, as the market's getting harder for some first-time entrants to come in, I think they should know of their different methods that they can come into the market, and buying and purchasing an investment property is one of them, and becoming a landlord or landlady, as the new term is come out. So I'm here to give some advice, talk about the discussion. I'm looking forward to speaking about this.
That was pretty good. That was awesome. Not bad at all.
On the fly.
So when I brought this topic to Irena, I'm like, okay, I want to get a lawyer. I want to get a real estate lawyer. Her and I have done deals together. We kind of want to, what should we talk about? And I brought the topic of, what about dealing with tenants as a landlord, or what your rights are as a tenant. And
I started talking.
You literally went off. She's like, oh, I have stories. Then I'm like, whoa. Save it for the podcast. Save it for the webinar. Just chill. Let's talk about it here. So
I still think you should have heard what I was going to say, so you would have actually had an idea what I was going to talk about before you just no.
I wanted you to save all the energy, all of that. I wanted to hear it live, here, so that you guys are going to be hearing it for the first time with me, which is awesome. So let's get right into it. The first things first is I want to kind of stress that, a lot of it, when you hear about tenants and dealing with tenants, people can think that it's all bad. You only have bad situations. I want to stress, it's not all bad. There are a lot of you just don't hear about the good. There's so many people that are out there that are investors that have no issues at all, and part of it is because they prep themselves from the beginning, making sure they qualify their tenant, making sure that they do all their due diligence at the beginning before they even hand it over the keys. Because as you probably know, as you do know, once you hand over the keys,
they believe it's their house, literally.
Right.
It is to a point, but yeah.
Right. Your leverage kind of decreases, right? So
100%.
I have a couple questions I want to start off. First things first. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see landlords make? If we could kind of start from the beginning, what are some of the issues that you see?
Yeah. First, and I'm not just saying this as a plug, but many landlords don't use a realtor, so they're like, I don't want to pay first and last month's rent to a real estate brokerage and to have the tenant's agent be paid. I want to do it myself. So they'll put up a Kijiji post or a Craigslist, view it, and they'll do it on their own. But in this day and age, as I'm sure as you know, there's fraudulent Equifax reports. People are fraudulently creating job letters, employment letters, and not to say they can't do that when using a realtor, but I find it's more prevalent in that regard. So they think they have this great tenant, and then months go by and they're like, oh my gosh, this person's late on rent, or they're not paying, or they've destroyed my house, or they've, used it as a drug house, like whatever the case may be. And I think it's because initially they weren't properly vetted. And I think the investment that you place into paying a realtor, I know many realtors don't do them as much anymore, and maybe it's more junior, but just use a real estate agent to source you the correct tenant. And I think that is one issue that is not, the one item that is not being addressed when potential landlords are looking for a tenant.
And it's so funny because usually when you're using a realtor, the realtor will put up on MLS and the whole nine. So that means that the tenants or the potential tenants that are coming to go view the property usually have a realtor themselves. Now, if that's the case, that tenant, that agent that's representing that tenant is not going to want to waste their time.
Exactly.
So they're going to want to do a lot of that due diligence way ahead of time, even before they get to you, just to make sure that they're not, driving up and down with somebody that's not qualified.
Pull your credit, show me your job, show me your letter of employment, show me the associated pay stubs. Like, they want to make sure that this person can actually afford and meet the qualifications. Because as I'm sure you know, in this market, there's actually bidding wars on rentals. I'm just like, what?
It's crazy. Literally, they're like paying 8 months in advance, a year in advance. Like, it's a regular thing.
Yeah, it's a bidding war. So you have to make sure that you're coming correct with your credentials. And I find when you don't have a realtor in place and you try to do it yourself, it's actually more expensive in the long run.
Have you ever heard of any bad? I know you have bad stories right off the top, or no?
Like concerning that.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I know this is like a PG-13 thing, so I don't want to go into rated R, but and I won't name names, but in my experience, I know some realtors that, there's some women that are employed as, we'll call them dancers, and they don't really have adequate, 9 to 5 income, and there are people, everyone's laughing, but there are people that actually work and have the side hustle of creating job letters or credit reports to help them get into the properties. And sometimes the realtors won't really do due diligence, so to see it okay, and they don't know the fraudulent items on these types of reports to look for to see that they're fraudulent, and then 4 or 5 months down the line, the client might come and be like, oh, this person said they were working at IBM as a software developer, but
that's not the case.
She can't pay or whatever, and then they find out, oh, she's a dancer or something. That's what I've heard happen, and it's more prevalent. I know it sounds funny, but it happens a lot because I think in this day and age, I don't know, maybe the 9 to 5 is not cutting it and they had to do something else, but they don't have the proper job or credit in order. And then at that point, the landlord's screwed because now they have someone in a 12-month lease and they can't pay the rent.
Right. And then not only that, I mean, even after the 12 months, once they go after your 12-month lease, you go month to month, they can literally just, it's not easy. Not like you can just kick them out. You have to have reasons.
And the landlord-tenant board is very tenant-based, and I'm sure we'll touch on that later on, but they are more times in favor of the tenant and not the landlord, regardless of the months that have gone with unpaid rent.
Right. What are, just curious, just because we're on that, what are some of the ways that somebody can, if you're a landlord, you have somebody that's not paying the rent, what are your... It's
a lengthy process. So you would first have to go to the landlord-tenant board and you would file I believe it's the N12 app. No, 12 is if you're moving back. I think it's an 11 or 11. Yep. I don't know the exact number, but you'd file the application with the landlord-tenant board and say, this person has not paid their rent on X amount of days. I've given them notices. I've asked and inquired. There's been no payment, and it's filed. The landlord-tenant board right now, especially with COVID, has been significantly backlogged. I believe right now they're probably going 5-6 months in arrears.
Holy
so
smokes.
it's not an instant gratification type thing. And they're currently still holding application hearings on Zoom. So it's good that they kind of get through 10, 11 a day versus when 4 or 5 when they're coming in person.
Right.
But what happens is, when they're filing these applications, even if there's a finding that the person was in arrears and they're ordered to leave, you don't just take the eviction and say, here you go, you're leaving.
Right.
The next step is that you have to contact the sheriff's office, and then the sheriff actually does the eviction. I think the sheriff's office is booking 6 to 7 months out right now, just depending on which area, whether you're in Toronto, Oshawa, et cetera. So the whole process.
That's due to COVID? Is that why they're so far?
Yeah, but they've already been backlogged. It's just worse now, but they were always backlogged. So in essence, like sometimes if someone, let's just say it's December of 2021 and you want someone out, that person may not leave until like August, September of the next year when you go through like from the application process straight into the sheriff's office evicting the tenant.
Wow.
And even then, sometimes they'll just destroy the house because they're angry that you're kicking them out.
Right.
They sometimes they won't have the money. They won't even pay the arrears. Like they don't even care to pay the arrears, even if they're ordered, because they usually have bad credit anyways.
Right.
So it really becomes a loss for the landlord.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not every tenant. You know, there's good tenants. I have a good tenant. He's been like loyal throughout the years and he's always paid his rent. Like there are good tenants, but those are just
Well, let's talk about that. So I mean, I'm kind of like bouncing back and forth, but it's just kind of it's just flowing. How did you source that tenant? Like what were the qualifications? What did you put that tenant through in order to get them?
In my years, I've had 2 investment properties, and for both of them, I used a realtor each time. The first one was when I was about 22, and with that one, like that person's still in the house to this day, and it's in a condo downtown, and he's basically just always paid his rent on time. I would say the bad side to that is that my rent increases have not been substantial, because if he could leave today, I would be so happy. But then I'd be scared because I'm like, you know, he's been so good, so like would a new person pay it?
Yeah.
But like he's been amazing. Like there's been like minor repairs, if anything. He always pays the rent, even if something like breaks down, he'll tell me right away. I do my annual inspections. He's been really good.
Nice.
Same with a townhouse in Pickering I had. I used a realtor. It was a family in there. They were kind of a headache.
You want to know what's funny though?
And I don't want them to watch this and see it.
Don't worry, we're going to have to cut this out. I'm not cutting
No,
this out.
I don't really care. No, it's fine. I'm just like, but no, they were horrible. Like it was to the point they were so messy and dirty and nasty. Like they brought mice in the townhouse.
Wow.
Then I would come in the house, I see mice dropping. So like, what is this? They're like, oh, like it must be the neighbors. But like they kept the house a disaster, and like we had to get like exterminators in to help contain the issue, and it was just really bad.
You want to know what's funny? I tell clients all the time, even just for myself, I have a tough time renting to family. And I also tell clients, and I say
not
that,
my family. It was a family, like a family.
A family.
Yes,
oh,
a family.
I thought you said your family.
I would never rent to my family. I'm sorry, no, because they wouldn't pay.
So
They wouldn't pay the rent.
fair enough.
No.
I thought you're. Oh goodness!
No.
I thought you were saying your family.
No.
You said a family.
My family would never pay the rent. They'd be like, oh,
and that's the reason
like,
why I was gonna say, like, for me, like, I was talking to clients and just. I remember earlier on I was doing a lot more leases in the whole 9, and you know, they're like, oh, I could just rent it to my cousin or rent it to. I'm like, guys. No. It's a lot harder to be stern with family, because for some reason, if you're renting out to your aunt or you're renting out to your cousin, they think you're rich. They think that you're going to be able to pay your mortgage, and they may miss a payment or pay a little bit late. I'm not saying all families like that. I'm just saying from my experience and from what I've heard as well, family can sometimes take advantage. So it's actually better in this situation, get a stranger, because you can do your due diligence in that regard.
I know someone that like purposely renovated their basement for rental income, and when the unit was done, like a cousin was like, oh my gosh, like I want to live here. And first of all, they bartered down the rent to something that was not market rent at the time.
Right.
And even at that point, I think the rent was maybe like $800 for a 2-bedroom. They still did not pay the rent. Yeah. And up to this day, I think they still live there, and they're not paying the rent. And like the poor owner, like, you know,
has to cover that mortgage.
She has to cover it, and she's not getting any help. The utilities are being run. There's like 4 people, I believe, in the basement. And up to now, like this happens. Wow. And I was like, no, from there, I'm like, I will never rent to family. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
There's always an excuse, like, oh, next month. It's really hard. Oh, and God forbid with COVID, no.
It should be a win-win situation. When you're renting out your place, it should be win-win, right? So it should be a situation where that person needs a place to live, you know, especially right now when there's a shortage, as Irena mentioned, like there's multiple offers on rentals, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and they're going above even the monthly rental price. So you want to make sure, like, which is crazy to me, by the way.
I don't see myself ever bidding for rental property, but I don't know, like, it's happening.
It doesn't make any sense. So, but yeah, like I wanted to ask that question, and especially when it came to family, because I found that was one of the main things that I found clients kind of, you know, second guessing and kind of on the fence. Should I not? And I'm like, hey, you know what? We could do our due diligence with them. Sure, I'm not saying all family members are bad, but at the end of the day, if it's a stranger, at least we know we can make those checks. So I want to kind of just touch on the checks to qualify a tenant. For me, or for everybody, I think you should 100% pull the credit. Get their credit report. I know there are different websites out there that will even allow you to pull it yourself. If you can do it yourself, that's actually ideal. I want to even discuss that with you when it comes to that. Are you able to, like, I know there's sites that will allow you to...
Yeah, I think Equifax has a way, they have like a consumer portal, and then they have one for like third parties. And I think you just have to get the consent or certain identifiers from the prospective tenant, but you can definitely use Equifax. That's what, I think TransUnion is another one as well.
Right. So obviously pull credit. Credit's going to tell you a lot. Usually people with a high credit score, or, you know, you can obviously see their credit history, they're going to care if you were to say, hey, if you're not paying your rent, we're going to have to report this to Equifax. So that's going to be a concern for them. The ones that with the higher ones are usually the ones that want to keep their credit spectacular because they're probably looking to buy a home later on, right?
Exactly.
So that's a main part. A rental application. So the AREA, the Ontario Real Estate Association, not sure why I struggled there. I've been dealing with them for 10 years. They have a rental application that you can use. And that rental application asks pretty much everything. Asks for their address, their current address, their last two addresses, you know, landlord information, the contact information for the landlord talks about, or it looks for, they ask for like job references and personal references. Your bank account, they even go that far, to be honest with you. They also, so many other things actually. Yeah. Oh, job, your employment, all that stuff is all in that rental application. So getting that,
I think like they want your supervisor's name,
exactly,
number. Like yeah.
Check these things, guys. All these things I'm telling you, please. When you're getting job letters, when you're getting employment, pay stubs, all these things, you can Google these things. You can make sure that
LinkedIn,
the number that
to make sure like they actually work there.
100%.
Or even that they have online presence, because I feel people lie about their identity, and I've heard so many fraud identity stories as well.
Check Facebook, check Instagram. Make sure that these people are who they say they are. Get photo ID.
They lie. So
much. Exactly. Get driver's license or passports. Get some type of photo ID that you can actually check that that's the person, and then do your research. We have so many resources that are free out there that you can actually grab so much information. I know it may seem like you're creeping or stalkerish, but no, really,
it's your house. It's your most expensive investment you probably own. So you want to make sure that someone that's going to live in there is going to take care of it just as if it was you.
Exactly. And I want to say, like, make sure you call, as I said, the references, but the landlord, call the previous landlord. If you can get two previous addresses, or the one that where they're currently living and the one previous, usually I find, and it's so funny, the landlord that's a current landlord will be very nice. Oh yeah, they're great.
Because you want them out.
Exactly. they're awesome. Oh yeah, they pay on time.
And that happened to someone actually I know.
Tell that story. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
So there was, I actually was just representing a tenant, a couple, and I usually don't do too much landlord-tenant, but there was a tenant that was referred to me from a realtor, and she was getting told that, you know, we're going to sell your house, we want you out, but they didn't actually have an offer. And as you know, as per landlord-tenant board, you have to have like a valid accepted firm offer, and then from there it's 60 days from the last rental day period to kick the tenants out, essentially.
Right.
But prior to that happening, they just really wanted them out because they wanted to renovate the house. So they just kept saying, like, I want you to leave, I want you to leave. So every time, like, a prospective landlord would call the tenant, she's like, oh, like, yes, oh, they're amazing. But at the end, like, once they left and they had to actually pay them, like, $15,000, what they settled for to actually just get them out of the house. Wow. All of a sudden, when they called, oh no, they're horrible.
Completely
like,
changed.
do not rent it. And up to now, like, I hope they don't watch this, but like up to now, they still have not found a house because the landlord is like refusing to give a positive reference because of the whole ordeal.
Wow.
Even though I do think like the landlord was wrong when trying to kick them out, regardless, because they didn't go through the proper ways or channels. But yeah, like they will say whatever they need to say to get you out. But once you're out, they will not give you a positive reference. So sometimes on applications, they'll actually omit or like lie about who the landlord is because they're worried that they won't get a positive reference.
Right. So the previous one will be able to give you that information because now there's no connection to them.
Yeah.
So the one that's not the one that's current, the one that was previous will be like, hey, buddy, I can give you the real deal. This person's gross. They didn't clean. They didn't do this. Or it could be raving reviews. But at least you can get the real deal. Holyfield, that's what I would say.
And it jeopardized it because up to now, that same client I'm talking about, like I think that she had to leave last month. Up to now, like she hasn't been able to get a house because apparently now if you work with a realtor and the listing agent wants a positive reference letter from the last a landlord and she can't get one.
100%. We're going to ask for all that. So that's why working with a realtor in that regard works in your benefit, because we're going to ask all of that. We're going to see all that. We're going to even like cross-reference to make sure that that landlord lives at that place and the whole nine. Because sometimes people can say, oh,
they lie.
Oh yeah, they live there. And meanwhile, it's your aunt or your uncle or somebody that's on the...
We got to run those title searches and find out that's the right owner.
We do it all.
Right.
So the other thing I wanted, of course, I mentioned pay stubs. I mentioned employment letter. Make those phone calls. Call the employer. Look up the phone number. Go on Google. Look up the employer. Look up all that information. Make sure you do your due diligence, because people lie. People say all kinds of stuff. They're very, very kind and very, very nice until they get into the unit and things change. Again, not everybody. We want to make sure that this is clear. This is not everybody's situation, but we want to prep you, because this could happen, so that you can be prepared, right? So
yeah, there's great tenants out there.
Which
you just have to choose the right one.
Exactly. Now they changed the law. There's a couple changes actually, but I want to talk about the Residential Tenancy Act. So like sorry, not the act, the Residential Tenancy application. Sorry. Right. Oh my goodness, I'm losing my mind.
You're not losing.
Residential Tenancy Agreement.
Yes.
That's what I want to say. I wanted to say that, not the act, not the letter, the agreement. So before, what we were able to do is
pretty much forms.
OREA forms, or you're able to just write an application yourself or an agreement yourself.
Right.
Now the government actually makes you have it on a standard residential
lease form.
Exactly. Yeah. So just tell me, like, have you seen any issues regarding that, or?
Yeah, so I'll just use myself as an example. When I had my previous tenant, I had the OREA, I think it's agreement to lease form that the realtor prepared. Yeah. That presented an offer, then we signed it back, and that was the agreement. But I believe in the first or second year of the tenant's tenancy, the government came out with this Ontario Standard Lease Form, and it, of course, again, it was in benefit of the tenant.
It was.
So they made sure that, if you didn't provide this form within 30 days of them asking, they didn't have to pay rent.
Yep.
There was, and I just still don't understand that. But so the form itself, it was a little bit more lengthier. There weren't there aren't any additional provisional clauses you can add. It's really just a bare bone form where you place how much the hydro is going to cost, utilities, the rent, how long the term is.
Right.
If there's payment for parking, etc., and then both parties sign it. So if there was a tenant and landlord that had an existing previous form, it was expected that they convert to the new form. If the tenant requested it, the landlord didn't have to take the initiative, but if the tenant asked for it, you have to provide that new form.
And if the tenant was smart, they would do that. They would make the change, because
especially if the landlord was like gone across the world or like was very careless, because then at any time they can say, well, I'm not paying rent till I get it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And also, like, whatever you added in, because as I said, like, you were able to just add in whatever clauses you wanted. Now, if you're using the tenancy agreement,
very strict. Like, I wanted
specific.
to add schedules, but like holding, like, I know you're really not supposed to, but like before pre-lawyer days, like I would hold like security deposits and stuff. No, because people damage your house and they run away. But you can't do that anymore. Like, you're not even allowed to take any security deposit whatsoever.
I wanted to talk about that, because that's a big one.
They damaged, like, even the family was talking about, they damaged my house for like there was a lot of stuff I had to fix.
Right. So you're not, so just to be clear, you're saying that you can't ask for a security deposit that's greater than what the actual
commercial
cost of the
has its own rules, but with residential, no.
Right.
First and last, that's all you can take.
First and last is what you could take. I think you could take up to, there is an amount, but it's very minimal for a security deposit.
It's like a key, I think like a
just
key
what it costs
deposit
a key. Yeah.
or like something. It's
just
very,
what
very
it costs
small.
to replace a key. So legally, I know there's still listings that are out there asking for, the security deposits, but legally it's
honestly,
not.
like, this is not legal advice.
Okay, so we're gonna just, this is off the record.
This is not legal advice, so please don't say I've said it. But I personally, I understand why people ask for security deposits, because as a landlord, I've had to, repair holes, I've, gashes in the doors, I've had to fix windows, mold around a bathtub that developed while they were there. Yep. And you don't get paid or compensated for that. And if the tenant goes to the landlord-tenant board to complain that you've tried to charge them for those items, you will be fined. Like, you'll have to reimburse them if they ever pay you.
Wow. So it's clearly from the benefit of the landlord, from the benefit of the tenant in that regard.
Yeah.
Right. So
definitely.
Yeah. So interesting. Okay. So there's another law that changed. Obviously, marijuana. Yeah. Oh, you look.
No, I don't.
She was
I
very
don't.
excited about that. Anyways,
Not my forte.
Fair
Sorry,
enough.
I need to be in clear space all the time. That's not for me.
No, so
I was just smiling.
Yeah, because it was a big deal when it changed, right? Obviously, it was a long time coming, but now obviously it being legal. What are the rules? What can landlords expect from their tenants? Are their tenants allowed to still, like, because it's legal, are they allowed to smoke in their home or have the having the plant and the whole nine?
Yeah, honestly, the lawyer answer is it depends. So I'll give a couple scenarios. So the first thing is if your investment property is a condo, each condo corporation has their own rules and regulations for the condos. I would say 98% of condos do not allow any of their tenants or even owners to smoke or grow marijuana in their property. True. It's in violation of condo bylaws. So in that regard, if you're renting a condo, no, you're not allowed to smoke. You can go on your balcony in some rules, but some of them even exclude the balcony and you actually have to go downstairs and outside off of condo property.
Right.
With residential homes, I mean, if there's rules in place, again, but you have to follow the standard lease form, which doesn't address that. So ultimately, tenants can do what they want. But if the landlord explicitly says, these are the rules of my property, you need to follow them, and they're in contravention of that, again, you can bring them to the landlord-tenant board, but 9 times out of 10, it will just get dismissed. They don't, it's not important to them, and it is, legal for the tenant to smoke, essentially.
I want to touch on just even
smoke, ingest, whatever. Sorry,
however you do it, you do it.
But grow house even with lenders, with homes, they usually ban your home from being one because, as you know, if your home, even though marijuana is legal right now, but if you use your house as a grow house op, many lenders will actually not give you a mortgage if you want to refinance 100%. Or sell your house, and that will impact your future income or equity in the home. So that's something to be mindful of as well.
Other thing I want to mention, just because we're talking about the tenancy agreement and Residential Tenancy Act, when it comes to pets, let's say they say, oh no, I don't have any pets. I only have a goldfish. I only have this. I only have that. And then they move in, and you come to your annual, check-in, and you see a big Dutty Greyhound or a Great Dane or something like that. What can you do in that situation as a landlord? I want to hear your story first, and then I want to know what you say.
Listen,
you seem like you had a story.
I'm West Indian. My family is pets need to be outside the house. And that was great.
I think that's a West Indian. That's a West Indian thing. Yeah.
So my daughter wants a dog, and I'm just when you're older, I just keep I don't have the time to take care of a dog. It's cute. Don't get me wrong, but as long as it's not in my bed or anything like that.
Fair enough.
But anyways, so. In the tenancy form agreement that's signed,
there's gonna be a lot of dog owners, by the way, that would probably be upset. But anyway, go. I'm just joking.
No,
I'm just
they
joking.
can
I'm
have
just
it.
joking.
I don't
I'm just
care.
joking.
So the tenancy form, initially, and especially when you file your application for rent, you'll be asked, do you have pets? And it'll say yes or no. And usually on the listing that you or another realtor would create, you would say whether or not pets were allowed. So let's just say pets are not allowed.
Sure.
And you move into the house, but you end up buying a pet, 6 months down the line, you fell in love with this Yorkie on the road, and you decided you wanted to, go to PetSmart and get your whole pet starter kit. The landlord cannot kick you out of the house because you brought a pet into the home.
Wow.
So again, that's another landlord-tenant hot issue, but they basically consider the pet like a human, like an animal that you can't just kick the person out. So the pet would have to stay in the home.
So, and there's nothing that the landlord can do in that regard, in that situation.
No.
So it's just what it is.
It's happened to so many tenants I've had before. I don't want dogs in my house. But it's, things change. They should advise the landlord, but normally they don't, and they just sneak the pet in.
Right.
But yeah, you can't end a lease because a pet was brought into the house, and there can't be an order to evict the pet.
So in that regard, it's so funny because if you do have a problem and you don't want somebody that has a pet, if they have an existing pet, this is where your search on Facebook or on Instagram comes handy.
Listen, they might be dog sitting. You can't say that.
That's fair, but most dog owners will have their
cute.
pets.
I'm actually entertaining it.
They will have it on Instagram. They'll have it on their profile. They'll have their pets.
Their dog moms or dog dads.
Right, exactly. We have somebody in the back here. Laura's yes, right? So
I'm
they'll have
open to it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but right now I just don't have the time.
So in that situation, check Facebook. It might be able to give you all the answers that you need. And if you see on Instagram and Facebook that they have a pet, chances are that dog or that pet's coming with them. So keep that in mind.
But yeah, the pets have rights too.
Any other things that you could think of that were, are, not your standard? I know we talk about pets. I think people usually know that, pets are kind of a hot topic. What's another thing that you can think of that we're not even like touching on right now?
So just for the potential investors out there, many of you are going to want to endeavor into this great investment plan to make money off of your home and to have someone else pay your mortgage. One thing that I find a lot of people don't pay attention to is like, so what happens when I sell? Like, how do I get this person out of my house?
Right.
So I would say, especially during COVID, there's been a lot of contentious cases that I've had to work on, both on the tenant and landlord side, where the tenants just didn't want to leave. They're like, Irena, like, my rent right now is $2,300. I'm looking on the MLS or with a realtor, and my rent in the same area is going to be like $3,100. I can't afford that. Right, so I'm staying. I don't care. Right. And they literally, like, there's one client. I was representing the seller, and the tenant would not leave, and she actually knew her rights, and she knew the landlord-tenant board would not accept the seller's application because they had placed the wrong date of the end date, and she got to stay an extra 6 months. The house actually just closed last week.
Oh my goodness!
And the sellers were so angry, and it caused a lot of mental stress on the sellers because they actually needed the money to sell, but they were in an offer, and the buyers just wanted a mutual release because like this tenant's not leaving. We went to the house the day before closing, and all her stuff's still there. And they didn't even want to sue the sellers. They're like, we just don't want to deal with her, so we're coming out of the deal.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's another issue that basically people that want to sell now that have tenants in their home, it's getting very hard to actually incentivize these tenants to leave. So in my case, with the case I was speaking about before last month, they actually they paid her $15,000 to leave.
Gave her 15
grand.
grand.
And that's not required under the act, but they just wanted her out so they
just
could
to
sell
get
the
her to
house.
sign the document and then leave. And to be honest with you, I know it sounds
and
like
that's
a lot of
money.
Like, it is a lot of money, but I mean, let's put it into perspective right now. People are selling their homes and they're making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars more
than they initially
right? Like, so I mean, $15,000 to get somebody out and to make sure that you can get back 500 or 600 grand or however much money that you're gonna be making on your home, I would just deem it as just cost of doing business, really, to be honest with you.
It's true, because that same tenant came back to me and she's like, okay, I've just realized that like I can't put anything down for $15,000. I'm like, that's a question you should have with your, or discussion you have with your agent and your broker, but I could have told you that if you had asked. Like 15 grand is not getting you like much of a down payment.
What is this,
anywhere.
so even just talking about that, what is the standard procedure to get, like, let's say you want to sell, you have a tenant in your place and you do want to sell your place, what are the steps that one should take in order to get that person?
There's like the legal route, and then there's just like the way that it can possibly happen. Like I feel if most landlords just had a simple conversation saying, hey, I'm looking at selling my house, I'm willing to like work with you on a time frame, but I just want to let you know like I'm going to start. I think when you have that conversation, you kind of include them in what you're doing, even though they really don't have any say other than the 24-hour notice on showing.
Right.
But like you're just being straight up with them. I've found in my experience they're a little bit more easier to work with, but I think when they're blinded and they just get served with this N12 at their door, which is basically the application that says, I'm either moving in to use the home for immediate family,
or renovations,
or I need to renovate like a major rental, or you need to leave because I have a firm offer. Like they're kind of blinded. Like I didn't know this was happening, and that's when they start being difficult because it's like you didn't have the courtesy to like give me a heads up so I could plan, and now you want me to change my life around in 60 days, which is usually the time period. So how you can alleviate that? That's just my non-legal advice, just based on what I've observed. But legally, all you really have to do is you would file the N12 application with the landlord-tenant board. You would serve them a copy, and then they would have 60 days notice. But you can't just have the intention to sell the house. There has to be a firm offer made on the house, and it's 60 days like from the firm offer date that they have to leave. Yeah.
So for people, just so that you understand that if you're a seller, you're pretty much looking at when you talking about the closing date and trying to figure it out, it has to be at least 60 days in that regard. You can't do no quick 30-day closing.
No.
It has to be at least 60 days. I would even go even a little bit.
I would give like more time. I would actually extend and do a long closing because
it makes
in
more
most
sense.
times in COVID, like they're not leaving right away, or they'll give you like they can't find a house.
Right.
Like they won't, or they have to stay in a hotel and they'll ask you to pay for it. I've seen that happen too, or an Airbnb until they find somewhere.
So I mean, 60 days is, I mean, that's the way you should do it. But as Irena said, even just do like, if you can get 90, if you get, I know it's an extra payment, but at the end if they trash the place or if they did anything or if they're, dragging their feet to leave, you have that buffer of about 30 days in order to get them out. So it just makes more sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. Any other thing that you want to talk on or touch on just that stand out?
Tenant.
I know you see it all, right? So
like I've had like matters where going back to marijuana, so like I've had cases where people were trying to get tenants out of the house that really like reeked the house of marijuana to the point that like when they were trying to list it as a rental property, potential tenants didn't want to rent because of it. The place would have had to get fumigated. I think that property did, and the smell was so in depth in the walls, like people were like, I don't want to rent here.
Right.
So I would say, just as a landlord, if you do choose to go this route, and I know we've talked about a lot of bad things, but like the good is like to have
a lot of good.
to be proactive. So as long as you give a tenant 24 hours notice, like you can go check on the house and just see how they're keeping it. You can smell, even if they're not smoking right at that time, like you'll know if they're smoking. You'll see if they have pets. Like even if you make up an excuse saying I have to come like change your filter, whatever it is,
or the smoke detector or something.
Like go in frequently, because I find a lot of landlords are okay, I'm collecting my rent, it's all good. It's like when you're trying to sell or something major happens, that's when you find out that they've trashed your house, and there's a lot of money. And always like keep a reserve fund too, because you never know of unexpected repairs as well.
Right, and just to kind of tie this all up, treat your tenants like customers. Like right? Like great customer service. That is everything. If it's a win-win situation, or if you create, as a landlord, you kind of have that control to create a win-win situation, you can avoid a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
Part of avoiding these problems, as I said before, also was just doing your due diligence up front, making sure that you do your searches, use a realtor if you can. I highly recommend you use it every time, to be honest with you.
It's not even if you can.
Yeah.
Use the realtor.
Thank you, Irena. I got my lawyer backing me up. What? Use a realtor.
Use the realtor.
They're going to do their due diligence for you. They're going to look into it for you, and they're going to make sure that they put the right tenant in, and then after that, it's up to you to make sure that you keep that relationship going. If you, as she said, if you're looking to sell, have that conversation with them. It doesn't have to be serve the N12 and that's that. Talk with them. See, okay, well, what's going on with you. Maybe they were already thinking about leaving, to be honest with you, and you're getting all worked up for no reason at all.
Yeah.
Right? So have that conversation. Don't be afraid if they are hesitant to leave and they're making excuses and you feel like it's going to be a problem. Offer some money in that situation. It might, if you're going to be selling, you're probably going to be making some money on your on the home. Just deem it as expenses, as closing costs, right? If it's going to cost you another $10,000 to get that person out, it might benefit you as opposed to losing that potential buyer.
Exactly. And treat your tenants well. Like record their birthdays, like send them little.
Yeah, man.
Like it doesn't even have to be expensive, but just like some chocolates, or like for Christmas, like if if they have kids, like get them like, I don't know, $20 like Toys R Us gift card. I don't know if $20 can buy anything
these days.
but just show like the appreciation. And I think when you do that, they're more willing to be like, oh, like this person's actually nice. They're treating me like someone that they respect. Like, and then I find in turn when you do that, they'll respect your home and they'll pay on time because they feel they're being treated. My
situation's been like yours. For my wife and I, we've had great tenants. We've had a situation where we had a couple bad ones, but we've had, for the most part, great tenants because we did our due diligence, because we treat them, we treat them like our customers, right? We treat them great. Like we gave great customer service, and we make sure that we check in, do all the birthdays and the whole nine to make sure that they're well. Because at the end of the day, they're paying down your mortgage. That's pretty important. They're paying down that loan that you have on that house, and you're providing them with a place to live. So if it's a win-win, everybody wins. If you have any other questions, please, you can reach out to me. However you look, I don't know how you're watching this, right? If it's on social media, if it's on Instagram, I don't know if it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or if it's YouTube, please get at me. You can email me at sold, SOLD, at Tristan Clunis, TRISTIAN, Clunis is CLUNIS.com. And you can get at me on social media, Tristan Clunis. Where can they? You did a great job, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Knocked it out the park.
On what? The video?
No, this was awesome. You knocked it out the park. How can they get at you?
You can email us at info@brookslawoffice.ca, BROOKS. Instagram, Brooks Law PC, and our new firm, Henry Brooks LLP, on Instagram as well. I don't do Twitter, but Instagram or.
So we need to get her on Twitter, but yeah, I have a
I
Twitter, but I don't use it anyway. So I'm not one to talk. I'm working on it. So guys, if you have any questions, as I said, you can get at us. I don't even think get at us is great grammar, but at the end of the day, I'm still gonna use it. Remember, clueless, ask clueless. Have a great day.